What's up, you guys? It's Kristen Feemster here, and today we are diving back into the series around boundaries. Now, for this video, we are going to talk about our identity, either in our careers or as caregivers. Now, originally, when I was thinking about this portion, I thought of it in just a workspace mentality. How are we with setting workplace boundaries and, that sort of thing. But then I started to think about what's the type of woman that would be very committed, high achieving in her career. And it's like, if she is high achieving in her career, chances are, even after retirement or even when there's nothing really in her career moving forward at the current time, she's probably overachieving somewhere. She's probably in some role or position somewhere else, caregiving or in more of a working function and over functioning in those situations too. So I wanted to make sure I cast the net wide to get all of y'all underneath this one subject matter, which is just our relationship and our boundaries with things that are a part of our identity. So when that comes to career, that comes to your role and position in organizations, whether that be religious organizations or nonprofits or maybe a sorority that you're in, those types of things, or it could be your role or position in your family as a caregiver in particular. Now, if anybody has ever considered you to be a superwoman or like a superhero in a certain situation, chances are you're probably very successful in your career, high achieving and high performing in your workspace. Now, that is great. If you've gone to school, if you've got multiple degrees, if you've really just had a long standing history in a certain position and have worked your way up or have really just solidified the impact that you've had in an organization, those are all good things that we really want to be able to celebrate. But I think the challenge comes in when those things have been such a priority, such a focus that we tend to lose ourselves within them. Some of the ways that I see this show up as far as our relationship with work and the boundaries that we need is actually in the physical amount of time that we spend working. Usually there's an issue with just output of hours and investment of hours into their job. And it's not about necessarily what the job is asking of them directly. It's about them wanting to do an exceptional job at whatever they've been tasked to do in their job description, right? And so if the hours are from 9 to 5, but they really just want to perfect that report before they send it in, now they're taking their laptop home and they're working well beyond, or they're filling in the gaps for doing someone else's work that wasn't able to do it for whatever reason. And there's just this overextension of physical hours invested into their career. If this is for you, if this message is for you, you'll know what I'm talking about as far as that threshold where it's like, this is what meets the requirement and the expectation of me, but then I just got to take it a step further. You know what I mean? And so that usually expresses itself in hours. How are you with leaving work at work, physically leaving your laptop at work, not checking your emails at 10:30, 11 p.m., 11:30 at night, not responding to emails in the middle of the night? How well do you do with taking your weekends off or allowing yourself to have a work-free vacation? These are all questions that I want you to consider. And if you find that you're having a challenge with that, then the rest of this video is going to help you find a way to follow through on your word and hold yourself to a certain standard, but also take care of yourself through some effective boundaries. Another sign of this that you might see in yourself is feeling like you were hired for one position, but then now you're this multifaceted, all-knowing, all-doing person at your job. You're the person that people go to if they're in a bind that's complex or that requires, an understanding of a multitude of levels within the company or the business. So they may think, oh, you know what? I know exactly who to go ask this miscellaneous question, who's going to be able to have the answer for us. And who is it? It's you, right? So if you find yourself being very skilled at a lot of different positions in your job, then chances are there's been a time where you've been asked to do something or you volunteered to do something that was beyond your job's description and your job requirements, and that's how you've become, the go-to person for that. Now, that is a great skill to have. We love being gifted. We love being, competent in a multitude of ways, but when it comes to work-life balance, we have to know what our capacity truly is, and just because we can do it doesn't necessarily mean that we should do it. Another sign that you might need some workplace boundaries is if other people around you are able to slack off on their job, right? Off the notion that, oh, she's got it. If I don't do it, I'll just ask for so and so's help and she'll do it for me. Those are the types of dynamics that you have to realize that although I could be helpful in this space, I'm really enabling someone else to drop the ball on something that's really their responsibility. And so if you find a lot of people, calling out of work or, taking random PTO without really thinking through how their job is going to move forward, and they just kind of assume or throw it to you last minute to cover for them, then that's a sign that there's probably going to be a need for some workplace boundaries if you want to have a more balanced way of approaching your own position. Because if you are taking on someone else's stuff, then that's pushing beside or pushing back the things that you're supposed to be doing for yourself, which leads to working longer hours, taking your laptop home. You see how that's like a domino effect of things. Another sign that I want to suggest here is being the martyr for events to be successful. Let's think about it. Like when it comes to planning an event, right? There are different stages of event planning. You have your brainstorming, you have your development of a committee, then you have your delegation of different roles, and then you have, the vendors and the, actual practical steps to getting it set up, and then you have your day of event, right? And so if you have a hard time separating yourself from your work, from your identity, you will often find yourself inserting yourself or being summoned into crisis moment, success at any cost type of moment. So this means that somebody dropped the ball 6 months ago, 3 months ago, last night, last week, and then here you are to save the day, and you martyr yourself on the strength of, but I just want the event to be successful. It's just about the babies. We got to get the kids, got to have what they need, and you end up throwing yourself under the bus in order to save the event and to prevent someone else's mistakes from being evident. Now, I get that. That's a hard one. I get that because you're right. You want whatever is forward facing, that your attendees or your customers or your clients at your company are not at fault for people dropping the ball. But when we come in to save the day like that and put it on place and hang it up as being, oh, I just wanted the event to be successful, we're now letting other people in our workspace know that they can also drop the ball or have mistakes, and that you're always going to be the one that's taking responsibility for the ultimate success of the event. It's like, okay, if the event isn't perfect, is it the end of the world? Like, do I need to come in, swoop in and save this one aspect of the event or of the project or whatever the case may be? Or can I just kind of let natural consequences play out, realizing that at the end of the day, it's going to be okay and I don't have to overexert myself? So those are just some ways to kind of think about how is this showing up in my life? And I know I'm giving workplace examples, but you guys, again, think about this outside the box in some other areas of your life. We're talking about a general over-functioning, overachieving type of role, and this can show up in a lot of different ways. And on the flip side, you can also find yourself in this high achieving mentality as a trauma response. If you are used to surviving and having to dig yourself out of a lot of difficult circumstances and just make it at any cost, it can be kind of hard to pull that mentality back in once you're in a stable, safe environment. And so we perpetuate that by continuing to go and go and go and take on and take on and take on, realizing that survival tactic that we've been using to get ourselves out of a financially unstable situation, or to get us into the career that we've chosen, or to make it as far as we have, that we did it, we've made it, and that now we can rest. There's a long list of reasons that are probably rooted in early childhood experiences for you, or your family of origin values that were instilled in you growing up that have led to you feeling like you need to show up in this way. And even in a broader way, the way society raises girls to be that person that is wanting to be needed. We want to be useful, we want to be helpful, and that's kind of a gender role that we're conditioned to at birth and on, you know what I mean, from a societal standpoint. but it's also reinforced and probably the most impactful in our family systems. And so think about the other women in your life, women that you looked up to. Chances are they probably demonstrated some high achieving, top performing, caregiver, superwoman level type of scenarios and situations that have also been something that you've been able to observe and assume for yourself. And so I always like to have my clients take a look at their family of origin. I like to have them take a look at some of their early memories and understand what influenced them to feel like I need to be needed. Like that is my identity. It shows up in work. It shows up in this organization. It shows up in these other random things that don't even really matter all that much at the end of the day. But for whatever reason, I need to be needed. And so I find myself in places where there's an issue for me to fix and for me to rescue. That's some inner work that we have to do to unlearn that as being our role and to sit with some of the emotional discomfort that comes from unlearning that. Also say that guilt is often a motivator for showing up in this way. And so when it gets into discerning where I should set a boundary or where I shouldn't, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to tell you now anyway. If you are being motivated by guilt and obligation to do something, that is an opportunity for you to set a boundary with yourself and with other people. And we've been through this. We've talked about this in a previous video, right? But guilt cannot be the sustaining motivator for the things that you find yourself in. And if so, you're headed for burnout. You are headed for burnout. We do things out of guilt, and out of guilt, it means that we're going to feel bad for ourselves or for the other person if we don't do it. And then if that other person doesn't reflect back appreciation or understanding how much it took you to show up for them or to follow through on that work project for them. I covered for you all day, and they don't really receive or thank you or show appreciation in the same way. Then we become resentful. Then we've expended a lot of energy out of our cup, not having our cup refilled with any, sort of love or acknowledgement. And now we're burnt out. Sure, you can be generous. Sure, you can be resourceful. You can be dependable. You can be helpful. But if you are within yourself and you're thinking, am I feeling very generous around this? Am I feeling very helpful in doing this? Or am I feeling like I want to avoid feeling guilty in doing this? Or am I feeling obligated in doing this? And if so, that's an opportunity to set a boundary. Let's talk about some solutions that you can start to use in your work environments, in your roles in life, in order to give yourself some freedom and to encourage other people to become more responsible for themselves. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to get in the habit of naming your true capacity. This is about honesty with yourself. Sometimes we lie to ourselves. I can do it. I'm okay. And it's like, let me sit and be genuinely honest with myself. Let me not respond out of conditioning and out of reflex, but let me actually consider, take a moment. It's not as urgent as it may feel. Pause and explore, what is my capacity right now? What else is on my plate at work? What else is on my plate in my personal life that is going to make it hard for me to take on anything extra in work? I want you to be clear about what those things are, regardless of whether you say yes or no. I want you to at least make yourself acknowledge what you already have on your plate so that you can be honest with yourself about where you are and what you're about to say yes to potentially. And then the next thing that I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, what are my non-negotiables? Okay, so even if I feel inclined to say yes here, what would I be willing to say no to? Like, where is the line? Maybe I've assessed my capacity and I still feel like I have some space to take on this extra task or to cover for someone or, to assume another position temporarily. Yeah, but like, where would my line be? Like, can I even articulate for myself the threshold to which I would have to say no more? Name your capacity and your non-negotiables before you give an answer. Another thing that you're going to have to do when it comes to setting workplace boundaries is that you're going to have to be assertive. You're going to have to be assertive. If people are used to you, taking on extra tasks and showing up for them, they may not get your, I don't know, I'll see if I can do it. They're not going to catch on to that the way that you think that they're going to catch on to that. They're probably going to assume your default. They're going to show up in their default and they're going to assume your default, which is you usually say yes. So we can't give those gray area. I might, well, maybe if, let me double check and see if I can, all of that, you guys, y'all know what I'm talking about. Those are all gray area answers that are kind of trying to show a little resistance without being assertive to say, I don't have the capacity to do that right now. I wish I could, but honestly, this week I am really just already jam packed with meetings and other deadlines that I have. Is there anyone else that you could ask to help you with that? That's assertive. That's a clear understanding that I don't have it. And you're going to have to find it somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? But if we say, well, I mean, maybe I might have some time on Thursday, or oh, you could check back on Friday, and maybe that's all giving us an opportunity to, again, push back a little bit without saying and articulating ourselves in an assertive way. This is going to rub up on your guilt. This is going to rub up on feeling maybe even aggressive. Sometimes when we're not used to setting boundaries, our boundaries can make us feel like we're being aggressive when really we're being assertive. And the next point I want to make about that is that you're going to have to lean into that discomfort and know that it is normal to feel that way. A lot of times we feel a little guilty. We think that's a sign to pull back, and that's not. That's not a sign that you need to pull back. That's a sign that you're doing something different and that you're not used to it. And so the only way to get used to what assertive sounds like is to show up assertively in the spaces that you can. If you show up in an assertive way and then you assess that maybe that was too aggressive for whatever reason, and then you pull all the way back to being passive, you never really set a boundary. You're never really getting used to what it feels like to remain firm, and you're never really giving people the opportunity to learn what they can and cannot ask you to do on their behalf. We have to remember, again, that less is more, okay? Could I do all things and it be okay? Yes. But would it be a half measure? Probably so, as opposed to saying, I'm going to work at doing my best and giving my best in these certain areas. And I'm going to free myself of having to be the expert and the perfectionist and the go-to person for 100 different things. I'm going to choose to do this handful of things very well and allow someone else to step in and do these other things well. I'm going to allow myself to delegate. I'm also going to allow myself to lean into being out of control, because I think that's a sneaky one when it comes to high achieving, top performing people, or even caregivers in certain spaces and in different roles and organizations. We kind of want to be in control. So we kind of volunteer ourselves to do certain things so that we can make sure that it goes exactly how we want it to go. We want the event to be successful. So we're going to come in and save the day to make sure it goes well so that we can sleep at night. But the reality is I haven't slept in 10 nights trying to sleep well at night after the event's over. Less is more. Get your rest. Delegate, allow people to show up so that when these moments come, you can feel purposeful in doing them and not resentful, not guilty, and not worn out to where you aren't even really able to enjoy the fruit of your labor. Well, thank you all for joining me for today's video. I hope this was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye.